So, we are going to talk about two individuals' personal journey when it comes to art collection. How the decisions are made, what their personal take has been, and why they've purchased their particular art collections. So this is the title of our discussion today. And I would like to introduce, we have Hsiao on my left. She is with Triada Capital. And she is from the finance world with over 20 years as a credit portfolio manager in London and Hong Kong, and 5 years as a lawyer prior to that in M&A. And she's an avid art collector, of course, and a big fan of Art Central. And on my right is Peter Lau. He's the chairman of the Board of Governors of Hong Kong Art Center, and also sits on the board of JCCAC and various other associations. And Peter is a former banker and runs his printing company, and is also an avid art collector. So today I'm going to just have a discussion and have a dialogue with Monica, first of all, and maybe ask Monica to share with us your art journey, how you started, what inspires you to buy, what type of buyer are you?
So, our journey actually really comes from a general love of arts in our family. My grandmother was a novelist. My grandfather painted Chinese paintings, and my mom really wanted to become an artist. So it has always been part of our family. And I inherited some Chinese paintings from my grandparents. So initially, we were actually more engaged in Chinese paintings and Japanese block prints and that sort. And then my husband and I both had spent quite a bit of time looking at the old masters and learning academically about Renaissance artists. And we always made an effort to see, all the museum exhibitions and so forth. So it really started out more with the classical painters that we were educating ourselves with. And then slowly we broadened out to abstract. And so that's really, we began our journey of fine arts collection really in Hong Kong. So when we moved here, we had always supported a bit local artists, but I think really properly collecting and curating was really when we came to Hong Kong.
And so when you talk about curating, how do you curate? How do you decide what you want to buy and then put on the walls of your home?
So I think it's a very personal journey, but initially, I think like most collectors, when we first start out, I feel like we always do it almost instinctively. It's really about responding to the aesthetics and what the appeal of the form, just physically, how you would see it in your home. But then we have grown and evolved to when we really kind of think a lot about being purposeful in our collection. It's curated to be a personal journey, but also we're living in Hong Kong where you don't have that much wall space. So I think that wall space is just like your brain share, like you only have so much time in the day, so it becomes very valuable to you on how you want to present your art, where it would go, and why are you buying this at all. So I think it has to be a really personal connection. And one of the things that we do, in fact, all of the art that we have in our home, other than the dead artists, we have actually met the artists in person, and that's like really important to us. So this is a piece that we got that initially I wouldn't say this is not a typical piece we would have bought, like if you asked me sort of 8 years ago, but This is one that, really spoke to me because it just felt very motherly. Many people read different things into this piece, which is a surrealist piece done by this artist who, we met there. She grew up with respiratory problems, and so that's why a lot of her pieces have this sort of breathing theme. She's African American, as you can see, and so you can see those blue motifs that are actually representing African heads. That's, a call to her heritage. And so you see the arm kind of, wrapped around like a hearth, and so it's meant to be kind of almost like a fireplace. So we have always enjoyed surrealists. And looking at all the old masters that paint surrealist art, and this is I think the reason why we connected with it, as well as sort of the feminist theme as well. So I think it's really about a combination of the artist's own assignment of meaning to her, as well as whether it connects to you. That is important in every piece of art. It has to be something that you can imagine through time. You're not going to be bored. You're going to be seeing something new in it, and then of course you're layering on the aesthetics. But I think first it has to be something that you just instinctively want to know more. Why did this artist do it? What was the process? Like, for example, this piece is 3D and it has almost a sculptural element to it. She teaches at Yale, but she comes from an illustrative background, which you can tell. And she, likes sculpture as well. So you can see all of that being brought into this multimedium. And so the process is very important to me, how they come up with the concepts, how they actually create the work. So we usually read about the artists, watch videos of like their talks before we buy something. Yeah.
So it's the initial attraction or draw to the artwork, coupled with understanding the artist.
Yeah.
On a deeper level.
Maybe you could go to the next.
Sure.
So this one is very much about Hong Kong. This one we actually were casually browsing through different shows with a friend, and we weren't really kind of necessarily shopping for art per se, but we wanted to just see what was on show. And this is the artist Matthew Brandt, and he has been known for his photography. So his photography has been shown in the Whitney and is part of their permanent collection. Then he was venturing out to different mediums and wanted to do other sort of work. And in this case here, the piece that we bought, it's actually pressed glass so he learned how to do glass making. Then he pressed the glass onto a decal of his photography. In this case, he did a special series just for Hong Kong. And you could see this is, like kind of nostalgic of the remnants of, the old Hong Kong, right? And he pressed it. You can't see it here, but he actually pressed in sediment from Hong Kong into the glass. So it's a very special piece to us because we've, even if we're expats, we've actually lived here for a long time and we love the city. And this was, something that, we'll sort of keep forever. So.
And does Matthew live in Hong Kong, or?
He doesn't. He lives in LA.
Oh.
But it was meaningful to talk to him and understand how he approaches art. You see there a chandelier. The chandelier, I don't have a close up of that, but it's also really unique. What he does is like he gets permission of different people to go into their homes. And he takes pictures, and then he gets these old chandeliers from sort of, charity shops or whatever, like old vintage. And then he presses pictures from their home into the glass pieces to create this chandelier. So, it's meaningful that, he's connecting with people in a very intimate setting. And, I feel that artists like this, they're so curious and wanting to kind of explore different mediums, and they're so, I think you have to have a certain amount of empathy to appreciate art as well. And if you lack empathy, I think art actually helps you to, improve that, because it's really about connections. And, art ultimately is a language, right? So.
Okay. And this one? Do you want to speak to this one?
So this is, this is a very special piece to us personally. My husband and I were traveling in Vietnam, and everywhere we go, we try to visit local artists. In this case, we first saw a piece in a local gallery and asked around, and we found a friend who actually connected us with a gallery owner, and the owner contacted the artist, and we kind of specially went there to see him in his atelier. And so that's the artist there. He's a great guy, and through like sort of broken language, we could communicate, and he showed us the whole process of how he creates these lacquered works on this heavy wood boards that he's carving himself and whatever. But basically, the process is so laborious. We could tell it was layered, but when we saw his process, we really, really appreciated how the blood, sweat, and tears went into each piece. I grew up in Guam, and so this piece initially just resonated because it reminds me of the Guam sunset over the waters. I don't know that I don't think he actually necessarily thought of it that way, but then this is something that, he also was quite amused that this is what I saw, because I really see sort of time passing through each disc, like the sun setting. And 2 years later, we kept in touch with the gallery to see how he was doing. We would kind of continue to see his work, and 2 years later, he got really, really ill from doing this. So I think he didn't, people didn't realize the consequences of working on this type of lacquer with, because all of the pigments, he would get from nature and grind, but then it was really, I think, the sap of the tree and the way this was created. It turns out that he got really ill, and
you mean from the chemicals?
From the yes, and so he can't work anymore. And this was the last big piece set that a series. This is a series, but basically this was shown in the Hanoi Museum, which you could see there. So this is a very special piece, and he was so sweet when he shipped this to us. He shipped to us a bonus. It was a surprise, like a little piece, because he heard it was our wedding anniversary, and he inscripted. This is a type of personal relationship you cannot buy with money. This is not about money. This is about the fact that this is a piece of his soul embedded in this set. And anyway, it makes me tear up sometimes when I think about it. But
a very strong emotional connection to the artwork itself.
This is a very special set. And then I think it's about memories that you create when we go travel. It's not about buying kind of more junk. It's really by buying a piece of art. You're not only supporting the local community, but you're getting to know the culture, because there's so much of culture and the society, and it's really about that, because it engages you from that level. And then I think it's about being curious too. It enables us to go on a journey to learn about the country, about what influences. We were looking at some art yesterday and today, and just understanding the background of the artists and how they were brought up. There was an artist we've been studying who grew up in a commune and thought he had the best childhood, and it turned out that the people around him, all the commune adults, they were actually all KGB spies. And they were like...
Okay, that's a great story. We should have a whole other talk on that.
Yeah, but I think it's like things like this, you could see how it informs his art, because then you look at his art in a totally different way, So I think art is about that exploration and trying to find, it's one thing to learn about what meaning they're putting in, but that's a whole nother thing. Like you add your own meaning, and I see that pieces that we have in our home, our friends read very different things into it. And then I think that's what it brings dialogue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is a great thing. Everybody looks at things in different ways and really speaks and resonates. So thank you for your sharing. That's very, 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 very special with the different artists and the connection. So, Mr. Peter Lau,
Okay, my turn.
would you like to share with
Yes.
with us your journey?
Okay, yes. Well, I love many beautiful things. Art, beautiful objects. But the problem is I don't have that much money when I was young. Okay, and but I like painting. I like Chinese painting. I like Western painting, ink art, sculptures, anything beautiful, antiques. I love it. I like history. But the problem is when I was young, I was a young banker, but I don't have much money. But I still always go to auction house to look at beautiful stuff. So that at that time I start to collect some really cheap Chinese painting to start with. The reason for Chinese painting and seal is because I went to Canada to study when I was young. Grade 9. I started grade 9 during my teenage. I would say my Chinese was okay. I can read, I can write Chinese. I'm all right on Chinese. But when it comes to the Chinese sealed, you can go back to the page. When I look at those Chinese wording, then I realized I couldn't read any one of them. They are not the normal Chinese wording. So then I was puzzling, and then I started to dig into these subject matters. And then I learned a lot more of the Chinese fonts, the history, and then the seal, and then the ink, and then the different kind of stones. And that's how I got started of my collection journey. And because Chinese painting is expensive, and Chinese seal is much relatively cheap. And during the old days, I can buy one of those things at a couple $100 Hong Kong. And it's a lot of fun. And so that's how I got started.
Did you use the seal?
I do. Actually, my company, Hsiao One, if you ever look at my company logo, the logo is a sealed. It's a sealed in print. Yeah. So my logo is actually, I asked a famous sealed engraver to help me to create my company logo. Yeah.
So from a historical perspective.
Yes. So I start with the Chinese seal, and then I go into the Chinese painting. But I really start to collect when I really get into printing business. The reason being is when I'm into printing, then I print a lot of overseas art book. Then I got to learn a lot of the overseas artist work. Then I realized in Hong Kong, there are many, many interesting and good underrated artists in Hong Kong, yet there are no publication, very little publication on them. Because when I was in printing, I go to the Frankfurt Book Fair every year for the last 30 years. And you ever go to the Frankfurt Book Fair, which is the biggest and most important book fair in the world, you see many beautiful art book on many, many big masters, young emerging artists monograph. And yet, you see very, very little Hong Kong artist book. So then I start to get into publishing. So I get into art book publishing. Then I open up myself into many, many local arts communities, friends. And then you get hooked.
Grew.
Then you get hooked. Yeah. Then I got introduced to many great artists, local photographers, sculptors, and painters. then my horizon really expand, and then so now my core collection focus are Hong Kong artists. Yeah, so all 99% of my collections are done by Hong Kong artists.
And is it important to you for you to know the artist?
Yes, absolutely, because like if you look around, you see many beautiful artwork here, and some are pretty, some are really obscure, and some are really you scratch your head. And so if you don't know the artist, if you don't know the story behind, the reason, the messages, it's difficult to focus yourself in certain work and the meaning behind and the value of it. So if you know the artist, you know the character of the artist, whether he's really into it or he's just an infatuation for a few years, and by talking to the artist, then you know the theory, the philosophies, the hard work behind, then you will start to appreciate much more of the work that you are facing. So, and haste the value of it.
Do you have any stories about artists or any particular encounters like Monica
Yes,
has?
can I maybe, excuse me, sorry. Yeah. See the middle picture. That is done by a famous Hong Kong artist, a sculptor. He passed away a few years ago. He's one of the most important Hong Kong modern art sculptor in Hong Kong. His name is Zhang Yi, and sorry. Yeah. Okay. And yeah. And I actually first met him, gosh, maybe 15 years ago, at a gallery exhibition of his solo work, and then after I met him, we talked. He explained to me the meaning behind the techniques, and then after a while, you start to understanding his personality, his history. He immigrated to Los Angeles many years ago, but he actually was one of the earliest Hong Kong Chinese local sculptor who exhibited solo at the Hong Kong City Hall back in 1974, and that during that show, even the Hong Kong governor came to look at his work. And he's the teacher of many current local big master, including our academy head, Java. She is under him. So by knowing the artist, then you will able to get the well, you can get the good stuff from him. That's for sure, because he by building the rapport, then he will sometimes give you some good stuff at good price. then that's the benefit of it. But most importantly, by knowing him, he tell you many stories behind the creation of the works, and then he will also introduce some of his friends in the same art field. That is the added benefit to you for your understanding of the history of this particular art form in the Hong Kong arts development. Yeah. And
also additional appreciation.
Yes.
For the overall work.
Yeah. And then if you can also see on the picture on the right, on the left. Yeah. There are some books. I'm also into rare books. That's because I'm a printer and a publisher, and naturally I love books, and I also really interested in history. History of Hong Kong, history of China. So therefore, I start collecting rare books for quite some time. Yeah. So many interesting information you can get from those rare books. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And these books are on Hong Kong, history of Hong Kong, history of China.
If you see the two book on the left, the big book, that is actually from 1794. Yeah, it's an old book. Yes, it's a chart book. It's a book of many illustrations, and that is a record, a journal, a parliamentary paper record for the Makani embassy. If you remember, there's a British embassy went to Qing dynasty to China, visit Qinlong, during his birthday gala, and he go visit him, and then and upon his return, he wrote the book, the paper for the parliament, and that's the book. And that is significant because after that journey, that's the bad dream for for China. Because after that journey, the conclusion is they discovered that China is so weak, but it's so resourceful, so many goodies in China. So the British decided to invade China. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that is a very significant book, and then the one
on the right.
On the right, that is actually a book on zhengs, Chinese zhengs, and the one in the middle is on China. It's a Japanese book, because during the early 20th century, the Japanese do a lot of study of China, and then before they invade China, and the Japanese are really good in photography and photographic printing, so they did some really beautiful Chinese printing book on China photographies. Mm-hmm. So they photograph a lot of rare photos of China and printed beautifully and create big books. Yeah.
And the painting on the right here?
Well, those are Chinese
scrolls,
Chinese ink work, Chinese classical print. Yeah, and maybe one page before. Yeah, and on the right side, these are the Chinese calligraphy painting, and those actually, these are the goodies that I told you. The benefit of knowing the artists. See, these four pieces is done by a very famous local, Asian Hong Kong China artist, very famous, but there are many fake stuff. In Chinese painting, you see 90% of them are fake, and probably 10% are real. But these four is 100% genuine. Why do I know that? Because these four pieces is the artist who give it to a person called, on the right, Ji Heng, right? It says Ji Heng. And who is Ji Heng? Ji Heng is Zheng Yi. Because I know Zheng Yi, right? The sculptor. So that famous Chinese painter is the matchmaker, the Mu Yan of him. Yeah, so these are his wedding gift, and Zheng Yi gave it to me, sell it to me. so therefore, this is one of those goodies that the artist personally.
Yeah,
like you see the Vietnamese, huh? It gives you some really memorable gifts, right? Yeah, these are the goodies. Yeah. And then those on the left are the photographies. I'm also really into photographies collections, because I'm in the publishing, and our publishing house is specialized in photographies. So naturally, I collect photographies. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think we have a few more.
Yeah, and
this one.
And other photographies by He Fan. I know him well. And he also passed away a few years ago. And that is a very iconic photo by He Fan, and it's really valuable. He presented prints to me personally, and then actually have a solo exhibition for him in my place, and that lady at the corner, even she came to the solo. Well, she was an old lady at that time. Yeah. So it's quite fun, yeah. And then the middle one is Zheng Yi's work, and the other one, those are old Hong Kong masters' work, yeah. So my collection are mainly modern art, not as crazy as those contemporary work. I'm not into. My age, I guess, is not into those contemporary stuff. Yeah.
And I think there's one more slide.
These Actually, these are different. No, okay, I said 90% of my work are Chinese, Hong Kong Chinese. The one on the left is from China. These three are very important China artists, contemporary. The China contemporary art movement back in the 80s start with the Star Group, Sing Sing Hua Se. They start. Let's see, it says Ai Weiwei and all these people. Those are radical artists. During that time, they host a very radical art exhibition in front of the Central Academy of Art in Beijing, and then it's really different from what they are showing inside the building. So they have something really radical stuff outside, and then they get cracked down by the Chinese government, by the Chinese police. So they demonstrate, and the fourth runner, the three leader of that group are these two artists. So if you go to M+, you also see his work. Yeah. So I have some of their work. Yeah. In my collections. Yeah.
So you, Peter, seem to have a very a strong connection to the historical side, Hong Kong's history, China's history, and the people that have played roles in the historical side.
Yeah, and I know them. Actually, I get them. I buy them from the artists. Yeah, and I actually visit the artist in Beijing, and I go to his studio and I buy it from him. And they are radical. They are radical. Even when I went up to their studio, there are still people, still police. Well, not in uniform, but we know the police outside and watching them, and the artists are very outspoken and show me stuff, and I say, I don't want to look. Yeah, I like the work better.
So buying from the artist is definitely one way to make sure that it's real.
Yes.
That it's real,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So I think both have quite similar but also different approaches towards buying art. What would you if someone were to ask you, someone who's new to collecting art, coming to Art Central, for example, and or collect Hong Kong at Hong Kong Art Center, and saying, I'd like to buy, what would you say to them?
I mean, so I actually do get asked quite a lot by young people who are concerned that they don't know how to climb up the ladder in the art world if they don't have much money. And so to Peter's point, I think you start the journey with what you can afford, and there's plenty of art that you can afford, and you could see that in Art Central. Obviously, there's a lot of emerging artists that are undiscovered. I think what I actually can connect with how Peter has these Chinese paintings that are sort of inscribed to someone that's dedicated to people, and my grandmother, the Chinese paintings I inherited from her were all dedicated to her, to my grandfather, because they were in the artist circle, so they basically traded, right? She would give them her books, and then they would get some paintings for free. And I think that if you engage, as Peter said, I think engaging with the artist directly, or just starting small with their paperwork, slowly you will have the opportunity to buy at a price that you can afford, but also just you could start with the cheaper works, like going from watercolor paper sketches to eventually graduating to acrylics and oil, and that's totally fine, right? There's also lithographs, there's prints, limited edition prints, there's so I think there's many ways, but I think it is about also just enjoying that kind of journey of collecting anything. So like what Peter has is like the stamps, right? I mean that's what my grandfather used to collect. He used to collect also Oh, you're still young. You're not my grandma.
I'm not young anymore.
But that's what my
I wish
grandfather
I
used to do. And my grandfather used to collect old vintage Chinese teapots as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, each one of them had a story. And I think it was really because I grew up with so many curios and antiques around. And, you know, art really does come in all forms. And, you know, Peter collecting rare books, you know, that's something that also is, you know, it is also a form of art, right? I mean, even the binding process of, binding books, I think is fascinating. So, you know, I think people need to broaden the perspective of what it means to collect. And also just arts in general, what that means. What is it? You know, this is a perennial question, I think, is just what defines art. Some people say there isn't such a thing as bad art. I disagree with that. I think there is such a thing as bad art. But
Okay, how would you define bad art?
I think that, you know, there needs to be some, well, to me, I mean, this is a very personal, subjective way. I think bad art, any definition of that anyway is subjective. But to me, there should be some construct of a purpose. Like you're not just randomly doing something, right? I mean, I think this is the difference between someone who sketches really well and who's an artist. You can have somebody who's just illustrating, you know, by being, you know, just copying. That's not, to me, that's not art. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also about thinking about digital art today, right? Like what makes art, you know? I think expropriating other people's art and re-engineering is not art. There has to be, to me, a journey, a backstory, and also a really thoughtful process. You know, we just were listening to about a process, you know, of a young artist who actually prints 3D sculptures and then re-images it back into digital and then creates a virtual world before she paints that virtual world. And, you know, you still see the painterly skill in the painting, but it's the process. And I think I think that's what's fascinating. I mean, art has to be meaningful. So, you know, knowing the artist, understanding that, and then then I think the memories you attach to kind of how did you find that thing? How did you, you know, come across it? And then, you know, and then we tend to follow artists a lot. So we do have some artists that we have many pieces from. And, you know, like my grandparents did the same in their circle following artists. And, you know, sometimes it's just also like, you know, my grandmother, she, in her late life, she was in a senior home. And it happened that she realized, you know, a few floors above, there was an old artist who had retired there as well. So, you know, he was still, like, I think he was 89 or 88, and he was still painting. And so I have some paintings that, you know, they became friends, and he just did some paintings for her that she kind of gave each one of us, and that's really special, right? So it's not about just buying. I think it's about appreciating. Yeah. So, but I think that starting your journey, you have to be curious first.
Yeah. I would say buy something you really love. If you don't like it, you just buy it because you think it will appreciate in value. Don't do it. Like, if you really want to make money on stock market. Okay, don't you buy a property. If you want to make money, buy a stock. Like if you want to buy arts and wish that it will appreciate and make you rich, forget it. Yeah. But in the beginning, yes, affordability is definitely a critical point. Buy something that you can afford and you love. But after a while, if you are into your mid-journey, my experience is you buy something you can a little bit more than you can afford, because after a while, of course, I mean, depends on what journey you are, like what level. If you are up to a certain level, you know the clients and you know the artist, you know the artist's work is really good, and somehow the price tag is a bit higher than what you can afford. I would say, if you are marginally can afford, or if it is reaching to your pain point a little bit, do it, because if it aches for only for a few minutes or for a year, but if you don't buy it, you will get ache for your life. You get regret for your life.
You
if
know,
you don't buy it.
actually, Peter is
Yeah.
totally right. We were, I mean, there is a piece that we really regretted not buying a few
one you
years
were
ago.
just
But I
showing.
mean, no, a few years ago. But you know, that it reminds me of the story of my parents who they were poor when they got married, and my mom was telling us how they had tin cans of tuna to save up because she wanted this piece that they saw, you know, in the street market. And you know, I think it's stories like that, but it's also I think he's right. Like when you have reached a pain point, you know, it really makes you think a lot. Like, do you love it? Like, is this something that you're really, you know, it's important.
Okay, that's interesting. So Maria Kondo's question is, you know, if it makes you happy, makes you feel happy, then keep it. If it doesn't, you throw it away. And so today our speaker is saying, if you feel that pain point, then you buy it. You go for that pain point. I'm just going to, in the middle just right now, I'm just going to open it up to any questions that anyone might have, since we're doing a dialogue conversation.
Excuse me. Okay, great. Thank you. I have a question for actually all three of you. What is going to be your next purchase?
Oh, next. God's know, huh? There's so many beautiful things around us. This is Arts Month. You get overwhelmed by so many good stuff all around you, and so many galleria with sweet talking you to you and get you to spend money. For me, it's easy. I'm still concentrating on the Hong Kong artist work. So that's a very narrow scope, so it's easier for me to select. So yeah, I will definitely focus on the Hong Kong artist work. Yeah.
So we actually have already missed out on 3 pieces this week because we were working and we didn't get to the booth in time. But you know, we actually are looking at also. We have not yet purchased sculptures, and that's something that we're starting to look at. But there,
I have one advice for you. Art Center is now hosting the Collect Hong Kong. Come to our gallery, our Art Center, and you have many sculptures there.
So yeah, we'll go and we'll take a look. But I think we're looking at painters still too. You know, there's some interesting painters that have had, you know, a difficult personal journey, and you know those. So we're learning about those. There are a few painters that we're following right now that we have missed out on a particular work, but we're continuing to monitor. But yeah, sculptures, you know, is quite interesting, and we are also, you know, looking at some pieces with collages. Yeah, so actually our collection is quite eclectic. But we did recently buy a piece through one of the galleries in Art Central that was about sort of a layering of your experiences, your life experience and time. And so, you know, I think they're still showing, you know, that those works. I'm not sure if we're allowed to say.
Yeah. If you believe in price value depends on rarity, sculpture is the area that you should look at, because somehow in the last few years, the art students are enrolling into arts class, right? And among the painting, photographies, ceramic, and sculptures, sculpture is the least people study. And because nowadays people, young artists, they like to do things quickly. And they use AI, they use machines assistance. If we can, if if we can identify an artist who they still use their hands, create their own work, in particularly sculptures, I think those are rarity because there will be less and less people into that field. Yeah, so, yeah.
I think we had a question there. Yes.
Hi. Firstly, thank you so much for your insights. What's a common misconception? Hi. What's a common misconception about collecting art that you would like to dispel?
Collecting art.
I think the biggest misconception is about kind of defining collecting so narrowly that it's about money. It's not about money. The other misconception is what Peter was alluding to, that you think of art necessarily just as an investment. It's really for enjoyment. I don't, look, the way I look at it is quite pragmatic. I run a hedge fund, so obviously I do think about also following the market of certain artists, but the reality is that below a certain threshold, in my mind, this is just like a personal approach, I don't think about it as an investment at all. It really is just, do I like it? So I assume that once I spent that money, it's gone and I'm never going to sell the piece. In fact, actually, in our collection, we've never sold anything yet. There is a problem of space. So, I like sculptures, but the reality is you need a lot of space to show it properly. So I think the perception that you need to be really, buying a piece that goes up or whatever, that's I just think it's a totally wrong approach. But you should go to auctions and you should follow the market. You should understand the trend. I don't believe at all in chasing the trend. You have to just really, it's a very personal thing. There are some artists that are undiscovered for many, many years, and if it resonates, you should still buy it, even if it may never, in the market, it may never go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the investment objective for arts investment is definitely a point that a lot of people talk about, and it's something that I really oppose for people using that as their sole reason for buying art. Another misconception or things that I don't like, people always judge the art, is they judge them by high art and low art and fine art and craft. I sort of sometimes disagree to that because, of course, in terms of price point, there are high art and low art. But what's the purpose of art? Art is like you love it. It speaks to you, it creates a chemistry with you, it delivers a message to you, then it's good art. So I won't say, okay, this is a craft, this is a low student's work, so it's meaningless, and I don't agree. Sometimes even craft, if it speaks to you, if it creates a chemistry with you, I think it's still good art. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? No? Okay. Any, oh yes. Oh, do we? Yes,
I'm going to sneak in here. I'm curious if you could both speak just a moment to your experience with gallerists. I think we're sitting here in an art fair, and we have hundreds of gallerists around. And I think a lot of them, and as a former gallerist myself, struggle with that relationship sometimes with collectors. And maybe you can say something to what really works for you and that kind of relationship that you've developed and how that benefited you and your collection.
We have been engaging with different gallerists over the years where, we try to go to we do spend a lot of time with the big galleries too because, they have more resources, frankly, to educate. But then we, visit very, the small and emerging galleries, and it's just a little bit different approach because I think it would be a little bit less, I don't know how to describe it, but maybe a little bit less academic. With the large galleries, you get a lot of books, you get a lot of, it's a very different experience, but it's all, education. I think when you say what works, it really is about, selling art is selling an experience. It's not just selling that piece. And it's so important to give the context of the artist, not only about the background, which we've talked about a lot, but also just the whole evolution of the artist. There are artists where I see a piece aesthetically, it appeals to me, but then when I see the whole evolution of when that artist started to where he has come to, it maybe appealed to me less because I didn't see how, somehow I felt he was less authentic because he suddenly was creating something that he thought the gallery could sell. And so authenticity is very important to me, maybe not to everybody, but I think it's important that the gallery brings that across. To tell the story about the artist's biography, to tell the story of how the artist has developed over time, what influences the artist had as part of a movement, like Peter's collected art from, a historic context. We have a Matsutani piece that, it appeals to us because we had studied the Kutai movement, for example. The context and all of that, the gallery should be able to convey to you. And the best gallerists are those who are not trying to sell you anything, or the approach appears like they're not selling you anything, but more just educating you. And then you naturally will go back, right? So, and I think they're playing the long game. The best gallerists are playing the long game, knowing that one day you're going to come back. I mean, there are gallerists who actually are educating in young people very early on, programs to just educate, and then they know one day these people will have credit cards and they'll come back. And so, and then it's a very subtle, soft upselling that I can feel as they, lead you from pieces that are from emerging artists up to established. I don't believe that a painting that's multi-million US dollars is necessarily better than the paintings that are $10,000 or $2,000 or $200 for that matter. It's more that, naturally when you filter out, a lot of times you could see why a painting is $1 million. It's not because of the price, but because there is a quality, there is there's a background to it. And then there are, emerging artists where, you need to open your eyes and give it a chance. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that a Banksy, piece was like, selling for chips, and suddenly he became, big. And so if it speaks to you because there's originality, it's very important, the originality too. That this artist is memorable. There are some artists where you just can, anywhere, you could just identify who that artist is. And if there are people who copy his pieces, you will also know this is a bad copy of that artist. And I think that's really important too. So, but this is about education. The gallery's job should do that. And I think this is why I'm very happy to see all these galleries, in Hong Kong, but also the fact that Art Central is able to bring such diversity here, because Art Central is really doing that job, to me, of educating people who are just entering into the art world, it's really a place where you can walk around and train your eyes and develop your taste. I think as a collector, you need to start developing your own voice. What is it that, when we first started out, we'd be asking our friends who are more, had more experience collecting. And after a while, you really do develop your own taste. And that starts by going to the museums, exhibitions, all that. And then the gallery can give you the context of this artist, maybe having shown in a museum that you hadn't heard of, but then it leads you, it led us to make trips to go out there, you know. So part of the art collecting journey is a little bit like treasure hunting. It allows you also to find meaning in travel, I find. Like we, as we develop relationship with the gallery, they will also tell us about exhibitions in, you know, Paris or London, whatever. And if you happen to travel there, you can look them up, and they will, you know, contact their colleagues, and they'll show you around there. So it's you start developing this network, and the galleries will also host events like all this week. It's like nonstop, you know, events and dinners and lunches, whatever. And you know, then you get to meet other collectors, and that dialogue continues, and that's what's really special about galleries. It's about forming a community, and you know, Art Central bring all of that together, introducing you to these galleries. This type of fair is so important because you get a chance, you know, I think we're so lucky to live in a city like this in Hong Kong, where you get a chance this week to just, you know, everything's like so short distance for you to make contacts. You know, people here should be walking around and getting the context of the individuals, forming that relationship with the gallerists, having them on your WhatsApp, you know, on the email distribution, and you just get lots of stuff sent to you. You don't have to buy everything. I mean, it is about curating. Like, there's so many things I like, but there's only so much money I'm going to spend on my liquidity, and also so much wall space. And I really don't like the concept of storing too much where you know, don't give a show. So you need to be able to rotate that. But anyway, it's a long-winded answer, but galleries are a very important part of the ecosystem.
I couldn't agree more to her. So complete. But anyway, like we from a buyer side, we expect the gallery is the resource person. We expect the gallery be ready with informations and research, because we expect to learn something. The buyers, be it an art fund buyers or new homeowners who are looking for a painting for their walls, I think as a gallery, you should educate the clients, be as resourceful as possible, so that after he buys something and put it on the wall, he won't get laughed at by her friends. So because they get stories to explain their acquisitions reasons. So that's important. Yeah.
Has that happened to you before, Peter?
Of course, we all make mistakes.
Thank you.
I have one more question, actually. What about commissioned work? Commissioned work. So if you like an artist, and it seems both Monica and Peter have artists, some have passed away, but living artists, have you done it? And would you, if you haven't, would you commission artwork?
I mean, we know people who have. We ourselves have not done that. I actually have a personal subjective thought about that, which is I happen to be of the belief that an artist should have the freedom to express it their way. And there's something artificial about you commissioning because you have an ego to direct like what it is that you want on your wall. Like, they are not your decorator. Mm-hmm. They are artists. And so this is like, you know, it's a spiritual process for them. So I think I would like to respect that. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have the right as a collector to say, okay, I don't like this piece of this artist. I like the style, but I like this period of work versus that period of work because of the evolution, and that, you know, different parts speak to you, or different color schemes might speak to you. But I don't criticize people who do it. I just personally think this it's more meaningful coming from the artist's own inspiration and authenticity.
I actually using one work, because we did we did the Zoom meeting when I was in London. I had commissioned an artist, a local artist, to do a family portrait painting. Yeah, actually in the old days, good old days, in the old time, many people commission artists to paint the personal portraits, the family portraits, and family pictures. It's quite common, but nowadays it's not so common. But I find that I did that once, and I found it very, very enjoyable, because it's different from photographies. Photographies, it's easy to find somebody to help you take a pictures of your family and put it on the wall. But by painting, then it's quite different. You have to gather all your family members, sit for a while, and
So he
Yeah.
painted from you live, not from a photograph.
we sit and pose, and they take pictures of us. Yeah, and then they paint from the pictures. Yeah, but still, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, and it's quite meaningful. I definitely recommend people to do that, and it's well, I guess nowadays it's not easy to find qualified painters who can paint quality portrait painting. Yeah, it's not easy, but it's worthwhile. Yeah.
But it's also very personal, right?
Yes,
Because
yes.
the painters have their own style.
Yeah.
And when it comes
like
to
Trump don't like his recent portrait, he throw that away.
I don't think Trump likes a lot of things, but that's another discussion. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I was just wondering, like, for an artist and a collector together, how influential is, well, for a collector more, how influential is price when you're deciding to buy a piece? Like, in terms of, like, for emerging artists, like, when they're deciding to put a price on their piece, especially in the beginning, what recommendations do you have, and, like, how much do you think subconsciously does it influence your decision in buying a piece?
So, while you can't put a price on, art in theory, right? If you're asking from a very business pragmatic standpoint, I mean, it is the other side to the art market we have to confront. Like I said, for me, below a certain threshold, like the price doesn't influence my buying that piece. That's me. However, if I were kind of looking at how to price something, and that's just the question at hand, then I think the education of the artists, how it does seem to play a factor. A lot of people want to know kind of the training that they had, the journey that they had, and then it's also some emerging artists have had some exhibitions that are maybe less known exhibitions, but those also have a hand in the price. Emerging artists will not have auction prices, so there's no context for that. But then usually it'll be then based on the last print. So if they had already started to sell, then some galleries will kind of nudge up a little bit every year. But I think it's also in our markets where, in hedge fund world, I happen to trade bonds, a lot of it is about supply and demand, right? And so the supply, and we do often ask, we want to know, as a curiosity, like how many pieces does that artist produce a year? How much work goes into that piece? All of that, has a hand in it at the beginning. And then, of course, later on, if you become established, it's so subjective, right?
Yeah, in the Chinese painting market, and sometimes some on the old master market, they are standard price by size, but this is not right. Particular for emerging artists, for young artists, there are no price reference for what they do, and the problem for many local emerging artists is they have a lot of strong ego, and they always price them quite at a relatively high price. So I don't have a solid advice or answer to the pricing. Pricing for art is an art. There's no science to it. If you I know there's some young artists once argue with me saying, trying to use man-hour cost compared to price on the work. He spends so many hours on this, so it should worth that much. It's not right? It's not right. But so there are no absolute answer to it.
Actually, one more thing I was thinking about is that some emerging artists you could see really just take off because particular collectors collect them, and the minute it falls into some collector identifies, then everybody sort of, there is a herd mentality to it no matter what we say here. We can say what we were saying in the panel, and there's still an element of that.
Yeah. One thing's for sure, art price for emerging artists, it doesn't go linear. Yeah, if suddenly one day you get some good luck, and then most collectors chasing you.
Are you an artist?
I have a friend who's an artist emerging. He's doing pretty well. But we were discussing this the other day because especially when he started putting his art in a gallery, he was explaining to me that it was really hard for him to decide for pricing because he didn't want to scare away potential collectors and stuff, but he also didn't want to devalue his art in a way. It's what you were saying. It's about a bit of ego and as well the business perspective. So I was just wondering so I can tell him.
Yeah, I mean, so we have, Peter mentioned just now, so at Hong Kong Art Center, we have a Collect Hong Kong art fair right now. And so we feature a lot of the artwork from art universities in Hong Kong, art institutions, all local, because our whole point is we want to feature local artists. And what you're saying, so we see it a lot. We see it where even fresher, I mean, it sounds like your friend is already at the gallerist level, but we see it in fresher where the students graduate from art school and then they're trying to get in the door. And the price points, if you ask me, are relatively low. I think they're too low to me. But then we have seen artists who then they get snapped up by one or two collectors. And then, as Peter said, it's not linear. It just whoop, it just goes up. And so we have one right now who's being featured in the gallery. And a few years ago, nobody had really heard of her, but now she's very hot. So I think it's also luck, timing. You know, if someone snaps up your friends or takes a fancy to your friend's artwork. But yeah, starting out, I mean, from what I see at the really starting emerging level, it's for me, I think it's almost too low.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to thank the panel for being here and for this very interesting conversation.